So one of the things that I very much enjoy about being a Unitarian Universalist minister is that there is freedom in the pulpit, in that we are not, some traditions use what is called a lectionary, and that is when they go through the the Bible scripture throughout the course of a year, and all of the churches are using the same lectionary, and so it's always the same Bible verse that the different churches are using. And that, I mean, that is not a bad thing if you are in the Christian faith and there's some continuity in that. And sometimes the good thing about that is it allows you to it commits you to struggle with some of those scriptures you may not actually agree with, but it's in the lectionary, and so you deal with them and you address them. In the UU church, we don't have a lectionary. We just have we have principles, and we have, and we have different themes each month. But this week, I was thinking a lot of times what I talk about is what I need to hear about. And this was kind of a heavy week. I mean, the last few years have been kind of heavy. There are fires going on, there's a drought, it's 103 degrees. There's immigration issues going on. And I just thought, what do I need? I need something a little more uplifting. I need a little bit of hope. I need a little bit of joy. And so I thought, well, let's talk about the divine attributes of spirit. And I thought that was a great title because I like all those words. Divine attributes of spirit. But then, that then comes down to the next question is, okay, well, Wendy, what does that mean you are talking to a UU congregation? So we will be wordsmithing all of these words. What does divine mean? What does spirit mean? And so I appreciate very much the conversation that Maya just had with the children, because when we're talking about concepts that are a little bit esoteric, sometimes language is not the best avenue or venue to express what we're thinking or feeling about a certain word or concept. And that's why I loved the reading today, Nancy Schaefer's That Which Encompasses All, because as we could see in that reading, there's no one word for what it means when we're talking about the divine or when we're talking about spirit. When I think about spirit, I believe that we all have a spirit, but for me, it's that part of me that is bigger than just my physical body. It's more than what I can see with my five senses. It's that part of us that we kind of know is there, but we don't have words for it because our senses can't necessarily see it. And yet, if we're in tune, we pick it up through inspiration. We pick up it through intuitive knowing. How many of you have ever had that experience when you are thinking about or talking about someone that you love that is no longer with you, and all of a sudden you just get a little chill, a little shiver? To me, that means that you're connecting with them on that energetic level. And I think we all have those kinds of experiences in our life, whether we call them spiritual experiences or not. So and then the question then becomes, well, what is divine? And when I looked up the word divine, Wikipedia and Google said that which is of God. Well, then the question is like, well, what is God? right? And then off we go, especially if we like to have our intellect and our heart be in alignment so that we're not competing with intellect and spirit or science and religion. What does that all mean? And so what we've been talking about in both the Bhagavad Gita class and now in the conversations we're having with as we study the book The Kabbalion, there's something called in these in the Bhagavad Gita, they kind of talk about Brahman, and that's kind of that sea of life, and that's kind of how they understand God. And then in the Kabbalion, the Hermetic scientists, they talk about the all, which is kind of that ultimate reality that encompasses everything. And there's one principle that says, and I'll say it twice, okay? All is in the all, and the all is in all. And the all is capitalized, right? All, little all is in the all, and the all is in all, meaning reality, right? But it's kind of fun to think about. And so when we talk about divine or we talk about God or those esoteric words, what I'm referring to really is just that which we may have a sense is beyond us and within us, but we can't really totally define with words. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, because if we just stay with what we can see in this world with our senses, it can be kind of depressing. And so, when we talk about spirituality and even what that means in UU churches, I love to quote one of our UU theologians, Forrest Church. And he, used to talk to people. And when you tell somebody that you're a minister or a chaplain, a lot of times the first thing you get from some people, well, the first thing you get is, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just said that bad word, right? And then sometimes what you get is, well, I don't really believe in God. I don't really think there is a God. And I loved what Forrest Church would say. He would just smile at them and he would say, tell me about the God you don't believe in, because there's a good chance I don't believe in that God either. Isn't that great? That it allows us to open the conversation. But it was his gentle, compassionate way of saying, just because you may have rejected this concept over here of what God or ultimate reality might be, it doesn't totally close every door and window to the concept that there might just be something larger and magnificent out there that we can connect to, or maybe we are even a part of and connected with. And so that's what I kind of wanted us to talk about today, in a world that sometimes feels hard and heavy and kind of sad. Like, where is the hope? What are those divine attributes of spirit? And so in the metaphysical studies that I've been doing, there are 12, and I mean there are more than that, but I'm just gonna name the 12 so that you guys can start thinking about them. And as I name these, I invite you to just think about if you have these attributes in your own life. And if they're in your life, how are they acting in your life? And are you embracing them? And are you exuding them and expressing them in your own world? And then we're gonna go a little bit deeper, but one is abundance, the concept of abundance. Do you have abundance in your life? And if so, how do you express it? Love, that was named earlier by the kids. Joy, do you have joy in your life? Generosity, are you confident enough in your abundance that you are able to give to other people? Beauty, how do you understand beauty? What is beauty? Is it just a bunch of physical traits? Or is beauty something that can't quite be defined because it's something that you just know when you experience it, regardless of what the person or the item in front of you looks like? Confidence. Are we confident? Do we express that confidence in our lives? Wisdom. Who in your world do you look to for guidance and wisdom? And are there people in your own life who look to you for guidance and wisdom? And my guess is that for all of us, the answer is yes, because every one of us has wisdom. And the question then becomes, how are we expressing it? Health. Health is a divine attribute. How do we care for ourselves? How do we care for our bodies? How do we care for the health of the world around us? Patience. Are we patient people? Are we willing to just kind of go with the flow and let things be and evolve in their own time? Or are we in a hurry and we need things to happen right away? How patient are we? I know that we have definitely been asking the people on Zoom to be patient for the last few weeks as we navigate our sound system. And that is also an expression of gratitude, right? When we can say, and humility, right? When we can say, we know things aren't perfect right now, but thank you for your patience. Like those are three attributes right there. The humility of us saying we don't have it all figured out. The gratitude that we can be compassionate with each other. And then the patience of this whole congregation who's like, yep, we're going to be patient while we figure it out. And that doesn't just happen in one area of our life. That happens in so many places. And so where in your life do you feel like you are patient? Where do you think you could be more patient? And then truth and peace. So those are just some attributes to think about and to contemplate on this week, and how are they expressing in your life? Are they in your physical life? Are they kind of more of an esoteric kind of idea? And I want to share where I saw that expressed this week. On today's Sunday, right? Yeah. Yesterday? Yeah. Friday. Okay. On Friday, there was a Colorado Immigration Rights Coalition meeting, a regional meeting in Ridgeway. And I love to go to those because a lot of times the immigration community, we meet on Zoom and it's just kind of not the same thing. And so it's really nice when we can have people from all over the Western Slope who are able to get together in person. And I think I told you all a few years ago the spiritual attribute of just belonging and welcoming. I shared the story about how this is a group that, you know, is a lot of them are bilingual. Some of us only speak English, some of us only speak Spanish. And so they have interpreters for both sides. And 2 years ago, I was there and the interpreter had to leave and they were all speaking in Spanish. And I have tried to teach myself Spanish through Duolingo and all of that. It doesn't work. But so they were speaking in Spanish and I was like, and it was fine with me. I was just like, I'm going to try to catch a word here and catch a word here and catch a word here. And all of a sudden, and I hadn't said anything, you know, I was just kind of being part of the group. And I told you all this a few years ago and I cried and I'm going to cry again. But all of a sudden, there was this voice behind me speaking in English. And they had these women, and most of the people that were able to show up at these meetings are women. And they had noticed that I kind of couldn't understand. And so they just kind of took turns quietly standing behind me and speaking. That is inclusion. That, to me, is beauty. That is a spiritual attribute. That is love. That is compassion. That is an expression of how we do that. So this year on Friday, I was there again, and this time they had interpreters, but so all of that was fine. And like I said, it's mostly women who are able to show up at these meetings. And so I think we probably had maybe 20, 25 women and maybe 4 or 5 men. But do you know how? And this is a immigration rights coalition meeting, right? Like you come with an agenda and you have a vision and you're talking about legislative priority and you know what's going on in the world and it's pretty important stuff right now, right? Do you know how we started the day? We started with 20 minutes of yoga. And then do you know what we did? We did 20 minutes of Zumba. And then do you know what we did? We had a whole presentation on how self-care is a form of resistance. And I was thinking, this is what happens when you put women in charge. And a lot of the women and the men, but the people in that room are people, like Richard said, are not totally safe. They are being treated poorly. They are being discriminated against, but they come together with each other. They find their voice. And what those women who are not safe chose to do when they came together to take on some really powerful and important issues, they breathed together. They danced together. They cried together. And then they planned together. That is power. That is community. That is commitment. To me, that meeting was divine. That meeting was spiritual. And that meeting is how we're going to change the world. So my invitation for us this week, think about those spiritual attributes that are in your own life. If you are expressing them, fantastic. If you're not, how might you express a little bit more joy, or a little bit more compassion, or a little bit more generosity, or a little bit more gratitude? Because every little bit matters. And just recognizing somebody who might not understand where you're coming from and gently helping them feel like they're part of the group. It matters. Showing up with joy and laughter and love, it matters. And when we feel like we're surrounded by people in a world that are losing that capacity for compassion and actually are embracing cruelty, we just have to remind ourselves we have so much more power when we're embracing these spiritual attributes, because that is where true strength and power comes. And so with that, I say we sing one of my favorite songs, Let It Be a Dance.